They're recording it so we could listen to it later too.
Yes, can anyone online go ahead and please mute your mics until it's time for public comment or public comment on the agenda item, and then we'll call on you. Thanks.
She's also obviously head of the,
So you can call it.
Is that a truck driver going by the highway? We've had that happen before. Anyway, I'd like to call this meeting of November 12th to order.
Okay, HBC meeting is 3:34. Okay, and
And now I'd like to roll call.
okay. Chair Blue Rock is absent, so Vice Chair Lindy Gibson,
Present.
and you will facilitate the meeting.
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Jack Luther,
Present.
Eli Isley,
Present.
and Kristen Vanderman. Present. Great. We have 4 out of our 5 commissioners, so we do have a quorum. So we can get the party started. I'm gonna do minutes from last meeting.
Yes, do I say I'd like a vote that we approve them? I'd like a motion.
Well, let's go ahead. Do you want to introduce the minutes first and see if anybody has any comments or corrections?
Oh, shoot. I don't have a copy of them.
That's okay.
Okay. I'd like to introduce the meeting minutes from our September meeting.
Yeah, September 11th.
See, I got September 10th. Okay. Yes. Did anyone have any questions?
Please hold on one second because now, can everybody see everybody? It's missing one little, okay, great. Thanks, sorry about that. So I tell you what, they could hear all that, so I think we're good. So do you want to go ahead and, does anybody have any questions? Do you want to ask if anybody has any corrections
Does
to the minutes?
anybody have any questions or corrections on the minutes?
Nope.
From September 11th.
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from September.
Second.
Go ahead. Sorry, Kristen motion and Eli seconds. You want to call for a vote?
Yes, all those in favor say aye.
Wonderful. 4-0. Thanks. IT guys fixing it all. You good?
That's what it is.
Thanks. No, it's policy on this, but he knows what. So now if you'd like to move on to the agenda.
I'd like to open up our meeting for public comment,
General public comment, correct? Thank
general
you.
public comment.
Is everybody here to talk about the agenda item? Okay,
Okay, So-
call for anybody online if they want to.
is there anybody online that would like to make a comment?
Not about the agenda item for industrial towel demolition. If you have
Correct.
comments or comments about anything under the purview of the historic commission, but not related to the agenda
Today's
item,
agenda, yes.
if you want to come off of mute and talk and give us your name and address.
Okay,
Good. Sorry, Grant Pager, 220 East Park. I'm the city manager, and I don't believe I've had the opportunity to attend one of these meetings since the board has been seated in this composition. And so I just like to take the opportunity to thank you all for your service. The city of Livingston really depends on our volunteers and especially our volunteer board members. And so, especially with the importance of Livingston's history, I really do thank you all for your service on board.
thank you.
Thank you.
It's a privilege.
I think that may be it for general public comments. If you want to close that and then.
Okay, we close public comments if there's no other public comments. And now we'll move to new business.
Okay.
And everyone received their 26-page PDF file.
Do you all get your packets?
Mhm.
Okay. Shall I introduce the item?
Please do.
Okay, I'm gonna introduce it, I'm gonna say a quick thing, just a reminder kind of, this is a little different than what we usually do. Usually we do historic design reviews on somebody that's coming in and saying, this is what I wanna do, and they know that. It's usually just exterior facade renovations or modifications. As you know, this is a little different. This is about the, the owners of the industrial tile building and property have come in and they have filled out an application to get a demolition permit for the existing building, which is within your purview in the downtown historic district, which is why it's coming before you. The building department cannot issue that demolition permit until the applicant brings it before you. That said, they are welcome to tell you, and they put a little bit of information in your packets about what's gonna go there, but they are not actually obligated to replace the building. They're coming before you about the demolition to replace it with another building. So, I would just ask you to kind of focus on that part of it, maybe the discussion really to kind of go on the building that's there versus what may or may not come after as much as possible. And because this is not a typical design review, I can pull up the application packet, but it's really mostly just text. There were not, it doesn't have the normal design details like we would usually have because they're asking to demo it. So I will ask though, if it works for you, to have the applicant come up here first. And do you want to just say a few words? And then if you want to, make a motion. Actually, our board doesn't usually do it that way. Let's stick with how we normally do it. Go ahead, offer the public comments on the agenda item, and then y'all can discuss and make your motion. Does that work?
Okay, do we listen to Chris first, though?
Yes.
Yes,
He was
okay.
the
Chris, would you like to come forward, introduce yourself and present your issue?
Sure. Chris Salsinski, 924 East Park, number 6. Did everybody get a packet that we submitted?
Yes, we did.
You did, so you got our demolition plan with that in the letter. I guess real quick, I just want to reiterate what Grant had said. I won't bore you with the projects that I've done over the years and a few in that extent, not always easy. But I have a passion for historical preservation, and I'll just leave it at that. Like I said, I won't bore you with it, but I do care. I care a lot, and I know what it means to this town. I also know what it means to housing, so, and the current situation that we're in, so I just wanted to get that out the air. Does anybody have any questions with what they were given? As far as the packet goes, reasons why we're struggling with the facade? Why it should stay, I mean, I guess that'd be my first question.
So typically, you kind of present what information you want. If there's something in here you'd like to reiterate,
Okay, I can.
and
do
then
that.
they can ask you questions.
Okay.
Yes.
Does everybody have? This,
Mhm.
you do. Okay.
And I'll
So-
pull it up for those online. Are you,
So I guess, going to the second page on 2, I guess I will just reiterate that concerning the current structure. Basically, when we bombed our heads on this thing, we divert funds from the housing project that we're trying to accomplish. With the idea that we're trying to get affordable units in there. Coming down to the existing, sod, the building has just visible deterioration in its roof and the masonry. There's currently abatement that still needs to be done up on the main roof. There's asbestos up there that has to come off on the whole complex. And then on the second level, right above the facade, I think I showed Tom, I showed Wendy, there was a fire, big fire. And then you go up on the second level up in there, it compromised a lot of the brick and mortar that was up there. So that facade structurally, in today's standards, just would not hold code. Our elevations to get into the complex, if we were to just keep the facade and remove the back remaining part, don't coincide with what we're trying to build. The elevations aren't there. We're trying to keep all the parking on this new facility, which is still in play as to what we're trying to, the number that we're trying to come up with. We're trying to keep all the parking on site. It's not an easy task. We don't want to overload the parking in that area, because as you know, parking's a big issue. So that takes up a story in and of itself with a podium build. I'm familiar with podium builds, getting that amount of vehicles on site takes at least one level. We looked at bringing in parking off of Clark, coming in there, and the city said no go, for various reasons, traffic flow, the civil engineering aspect of it, garbage, all that stuff, and just the traffic flow off Park. So our proposal of Mr. Horns is to come in off Second Street, bringing in our entryway would be off Second Street. So again, that facade, structurally, you can go through, look at your packet there, we ran through, we brought our structural engineers, and we looked at it. It's just no way. I know that we're willing to repurpose some of the bricks, like I've done in other projects, repurpose some of the materials in there. I'm all for repurposing, you know, and incorporate it in with the project itself. But to maintain that main wall off Second Street, we just can't wrap our heads around. The cost would be a lot. And then again, I can reiterate some of the areas. You know, the facade requires additional support for stability, rendering its retention both impractical and costly. Preserving the facade during new construction poses various risks and operational difficulties. So we've got to maintain that wall that's compromised, requires structurally, and to build a new structure behind that, tie that in and maintain code. Which we almost said possible. It's just good as far as we're concerned. Compliance with current seismic codes, introducing additional scopes and costs. We don't know what that would take. We don't. We know there's a building next door. We're addressing that structurally. But as far as the facade up front with the locks and what the city's proposing with the entrance on that corridor, its overall plan, you know, those locks are gonna have to be widened. So that's kind of where we're at. We beat our heads on this a lot. The remainder of that building, especially, it was an industrial site. Prior to us coming along, you know, people were complaining about the smells and all the cleanup, so it's been cleaned up. Phase one's been done, phase two's been done. Environmentally, it's been cleaned up and brought back to use. We would just like to bring use back to that portion of town so it doesn't end up in blight. We are really struggling to bring affordable units that are actually for real. I mean, I've heard and seen projects that people are gonna bring affordable units in and it is a struggle. I've yet seen it. We're trying it. We're working with the city and the state to try to make that happen. But when we've got to spend additional costs on items like that facade, it digs into it a lot deeper, and Tom and I went round and round. You know, you spend enough money, I realize you can reserve something there, but at what cost? You know, I did look at the city, you know, the city wants housing. It is their number one deal. Hey, we have an opportunity to bring it in. He's willing to put something up that with brick and make it work on the end of the town. That is, at the end of the day, a far better building than what we've got and what we've had down there. You know, it's an industrial site, so. Tom had mentioned that maybe we could move the building down by Clark, and that's crazy. So, you know, school plan of it, the roof lines of the structures and stuff would look odd if we went from what Bob originally had done his project down the lower end and then up. It wouldn't work. So I don't know how clear that is, but we do care. We're trying at every means to make this thing work. And again, if I didn't think this was something that was beneficial for Livingston, I wouldn't do it. I don't need it. I've got other projects that are as complicated, I guess, as as you could call it, but I do on this one, guys, I mean, we have an opportunity to bring a lot of housing. And for every dollar that we end up spending, and it is expensive to build and upgrade. Just the civil end of this is $1 less that goes back into the possibility of building. Anyway, if you have any questions on that, I guess I could take some answers. But that's, that's where we're at. I'm excited about the project. I'm glad to see that building is getting repurposed into housing. I know there's been other projects that this committee has approved that I didn't agree with. I won't mention them. Like, this is housing. It's not a bank. It's not a real estate agency. Well, those projects aren't bad. I get it, but I just think, the idea of trying to bring in housing. I thought what happened in the old hotel, I mean, it's excellent. The greenery was excellent. Hospital, excellent. Not easy, but they worked and they provide housing, and I think it's a big deal. So anyway, that's my spill on it. You guys got any questions?
I do, Chris, and I don't remember, we discussed this earlier this afternoon.
Yeah.
Is that original wall, can't that remain? I know seismic tests were run because I just live right down on the next block, next to the corner. And they tested the building, and I agree that everything should come down except that original wall. Because, and like I mentioned, for everybody now, if you look at the Talcott House, you're looking at a shell. The original Talcott House was built like this. And then they built the outside of it 18 inches out. And they did that for heating purposes and for cooling purposes. And I would like to see that Second Street wall remain. And then everything you do, bring everything else down. And then just leave that wall and just build like even 6 inches in and put a brick facade connecting the new structure, whether it's wooden or brick. With I'd like to see that existing outside wall remain if it's possible. And I think you said something like it needs patched or something. Remind me for everybody what you said.
So, yeah, I can appreciate that concept. And if it was that easy, I think we would look at it. But to design around something that's existing, that's old, outdated, compromised, and to design a facility, you have to remember, we're not just talking about above ground. We have civil to deal with storm drains issues, which the city has a very big problem with. So all that infrastructure that goes underneath that project to design all that and spend that kind of money to save that wall, it just isn't feasible.
Can you tell me how they
If
said
I
that?
could repurpose some of that building.
Yeah.
That's above and beyond that wall,
Mhm.
great, we might go with it, but I see daylight through there. I've patched that roof, I don't know, 3 times at least.
Well, I don't mean the roof, I mean the
No, I know-
original.
I know what
Okay,
you mean.
how is the integrity of it compromised? Because when we did a walkthrough, it looked all right to me.
Well, that's above my pay grade to really explain it, but we've had our engineer on site. It's a compromise by the fire and the structure itself.
But that wall I'm talking about doesn't go up to where where the fire was. You know, it only goes up 1 story.
But that's all one.
Madam Vice Chair,
Okay.
Yeah, it's all.
if I may. would you-
Sure.
Would you mind, because I think there's probably gonna be some more deliberation and questions. Would you
Yeah,
Go ahead
I-
and get the public comments on the agenda items so that
Yes.
that can be
Oh.
part of your deliberations.
Okay,
And then, yeah, it's okay, but that way, because there are some people here to speak,
okay.
we're gonna ask you to keep it to 4 minutes.
I have more questions for Chris.
So typically what we do is we don't normally have that many people at HBC meetings with public comment. We take the public comment on this agenda item first, that way it can be included in your discussions.
And then Chris will come back up and talk.
If you have questions for him, you ask the questions and then it's typically not a back and forth. We'll get like a list of questions but the discussion really is among you four. And if you want me to line up questions, then we can ask that.
Okay,
I don't.
Yeah, but it's,
I do think we risk drifting into the discussion if we don't hear from public comment first.
And
So,
so include that in your
Yes, I
discussion.
think we
Okay.
should.
So, do you want to call for,
Is there any public comment? Chris opened it up for, questions or comments.
and if you could keep it to 4 minutes, I'm gonna have a little.
I have a handout for everybody in case I can't get through all this.
And it will become part of the minutes since you're.
Yeah,
meeting
and
that.
I'll have a copy for you too. I'm Bob Evinger, I live at 128 South Yellowstone Street, Livingston, and it's good to be here. Thank you all for, as Grant said, thank you all for your service. I was on your board and the URA board for over 10 years, so I know what a dedication it takes in order to do this. I think it's very difficult to discuss demolition without knowing what's going on, because we, and I would like to also thank Chris Talazinski for what he did with the Agri-Needs building. But I was very disappointed that it wasn't carried on in historic intent in the existing building that is scheduled to possibly demolish. The demolition of a contributing structure to Livingston's historic district is appropriate to the streetscape and size and character. Is a serious decision and a dangerous precedent to establish without knowing the footprint and design of what is going to replace it, and if it is in keeping with the historic district and the neighborhood. In any case, the proposed, and I mention it because it is in the packet, the proposed 5-story building is unprecedented in all of downtown and the historic district, and wrong, I think, for this location. A smaller scale, rethought structure, I think should be considered. I am for infill development, I'm all for increased housing. We have a condo next door that we did in 2004, that we took a building, gutted it, and put residences in the upstairs and in the basement, which is where I'm really worried now. There might be some compromising. They talked about a concern for facing Clark Street in the 300 block. But what about the residents that live on 3rd Street and the neighbors across the street on 2nd Street? They're all gonna be impounded. I think the negatives, things that they say are potential negative, that they can solve if they golf the property, which is the one next door, are understated. It is built on a slab with rock walls and basement occupancy. The exterior wall facing the possible demo towel building have not been exposed since the 1920s, and the rock foundation has been buried for 124 years. Even with the described mitigation, can it be guaranteed that there won't be a negative disaster to the building? I'm very concerned as being the developer of that project. My wife and Lucas Chad, we were the 3 developers of that project in 2007. Saving the original building would mitigate these possible negative effects. I'm also worried about the fact in digging, they say there's fumes underneath the foundation. Well, by taking that out and destroying the building, will that exhume those fumes and possibly have an effect on the occupants of the Goffner building? Grants could be assist in the facade and seismic concerns as they did with the 1900 Main Street building, which we did when I was chair of the URA several years ago. We did this to the Goffner condos, as I said. We gutted the building, restored the outside, fixed the roof, which had asbestos in it, and made the living space upstairs. And rather than maximizing the development potential, we provided a grass, tree-lined common area. Keeping the existing building will also provide a legal setback that the proposed building would need in order to be fire required setbacks, which allowing it to have windows on the north side. However, at the very least, if the building is demoed, the brick facade must be retained. As stated in the urban renewal grant, an urban renewal grant could provide financial assistance for both the seismic and the retrofit. In addition, one sentence left. In addition, I have the Historic Preservation Committee. I asked you to require as a condition that the historic sign with picture and building description be erected on Second Street facade or parkway. This signage can be provided by the State Office of Historic Preservation. I think anything's possible. You just need to have a little insight, which Chris has, and be able to do it correctly. I think anything's possible. We've done it. It can be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Is there anyone else that would like to make comment? Please identify yourself.
Lucas Shad, I'm an architect in town, I live at 422 South Fifth Street. Bob and Robin and I developed a neighboring property in 2007. And so I'm sort of, in general, I'm in favor of saving the brick facade of the industrial towel. Specifically, I'm concerned about the foundation of the condos next door because they are a stone foundation.
Mhm.
And there's a brick wall that is on the south side of the condos that we did
Mhm.
that had windows and doors in it. And then industrial towels right next to that, I mean, 2 inches away, something like this. So it's a big concern that when they take that wall off, it may damage the brick building next to it. Which I realize is a very specific concern, but I love our building and I want it to, you know, stay intact. I think the foundation is a big concern. Who knows what you're gonna find with that? And yeah, I think just in general, I'm in favor of saving the brick building.
Thank you. Anyone else?
The guys online. My name's Robin Hogan, I've been here on 128 South Yellowstone Street. And just to note that Bob gave you these, this is the image of the view as it is now. Picture of 3 times that size building in that view shed in the neighborhood. And it just seems unconscionable. I know we need housing, but we also need artist spaces. It could be other things. And I just hope that there is not a 5-story outcome. And I don't think they should tear it down before they know what's gonna happen.
Thank you, Robin. Is there anybody else? Public comment?
Oh, anyone on the.
Yeah, but nobody else in the room, right?
Nobody else in the rooms? Can we go to our Zoom?
I believe Dan.
All right, you want to hear from Dan Vermillion or am I next or?
Yeah.
Okay, Dan Vermillion, I live up the Shields, but own one of the condo units that is immediately adjacent to this proposed property or to the the old industrial tower building.
Dan,
Yeah.
Dan, I'm sorry, can you please give your address?
Oh, yeah, at 44 Adair Creek Road.
Thanks.
59047. Yeah, so I mean, I would share Mr. Shad's concerns just regarding and Bob, Mr. Ebbinger's concerns and Robin's concerns as it relates to the historical nature of the neighborhood, but also, just strictly from an adjacent landowner's perspective, ensuring that anything that goes on that property in the demolition process, it's my understanding they have to come back to this same board for an approval of a new project or for whatever they're, and so I guess today I would just limit the scope of my comments to the demolition. Deep concerns as it relates to the foundation, deep concerns as it relates to the wall that separates or, not saying they're concerns that can't be mitigated or addressed, but just want to make sure that our property and our historic building is considered in that demolition process and just put it on everyone on notice that we'll be watching carefully to make sure that there isn't damage to the property to ensure that our property rights are respected. Thank you.
If anyone else online that wants to talk, if you're, either raise your hand or you can come off mute.
Audio. Yes. I would like to say something.
Yeah, can we get your name and your address, please?
Colleen Fry, 214 South Second Street, Unit C. My question is this going to be low income housing?
Okay, So Colleen, the way that we typically do this is it's not really a back and forth. If you want to go ahead and if you have several questions, I'm happy to write them down. And
Okay.
anything within the purview of this group, the Historic Preservation Commission, we can discuss and answer. If your question's not answered, you can reach out to me separately and I can explain offline. But we're only going to discuss the things that are under the purview of this board today. So if you have other questions, I'll take them down. I've got that you have a question about whether this is all affordable housing or market rate.
Mhm.
Any others?
Affordable housing is not always the same as low income.
So we actually have a.
So if we can
the city-
differentiate,
The city actually has a thing about that, but let's get all their questions and then I'll, yeah.
okay, I just wanted to
Affordable
clarify
or
that
market
for the
rate?
audience, yes.
Was there anything else that you wanted to comment on or ask, Colleen?
Yes, what is the time frame for the demolition?
Okay, and we can get that from the applicants in a bit. Is there anything else?
No, I think that's it. Thank you.
Ms. Colleen? Three other people online. Is there anybody else that has public comments about this agenda item as relates to the demolition of this building? Not anything that is coming in the future, but about the demolition permit that's been requested for the industrial towel building. If you have comments, and you haven't gone yet and you're online, if you want to come off mute or raise your hand, go for it.
There's no,
Okay, I see Gregory.
Yes, my name is Gregory Rasnick, 214 South Second Street. I'm the new owner of apartment or condo B. I have concerns about the foundation of the condo and the preservation of the historic building that I just bought with my partner who's from Livingston. We are living there year round. In the description, it was described as an Airbnb building. That's actually not accurate. We'll be there year round. And I feel a little bit blindsided, frankly speaking. I just got an email this last week from other condo tenants or condo owners that this is going to happen, which I just, frankly speaking, a little bit blindsided. And I hope that the committee can take that into consideration when they're adjudicating whether or not to approve a demolition permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregory. Anyone else have public comments about this agenda item? Going once. Going twice. I think you can close public comment.
we're gonna close the public comments section and move on to old
Deliberation.
business.
Yeah,
Where are we?
deliberation.
We're deliberating on.
Oh, we're
Deliberating on this
deliberating.
one
Okay.
and I would say, I have the questions that Colleen asked, and I can tell you what can be addressed, what can't. And if there's, I guess maybe if you want to talk about it, line up some questions, I'll write them down. And then if you want to ask Chris to come up here and discuss, we
Okay.
can do it that way.
I have a question for him for clarification. We have reports on the VOC and the soil and the asbestos removal. I was wondering if there was any kind of official report on the structural integrity, the quality of the current brick and mortar on the facade, and any damage that the fire might have caused.
The what would have cost?
The fire.
Oh, okay. All right.
And,
Things down.
and what, if any, mitigation strategy has been discussed for the neighboring building to prevent damage or to address any potential problems that come up
During
Demolition.
during demolition?
Excellent. Got those. Anybody else want to throw some in?
Well, I think I don't necessarily have a question. Because I think that, I do consider this to be a design review. And it is a design review to just say, we're going to exterminate this building. Like, because it will no longer be there, and that will be, from what we're allowed to discuss right now, that will be the new design of this lot, is no building. And if that's all that we're going to look at right now, then the design review is whether or not we are going to allow this building just to not exist, without considering anything other than it not being there. And so, kind of with that in mind, my answer will be no. If we are not allowed to consider, basically, if we're gonna have a design review to demo this, and then later in the future, have a design review to decide whether or not we're okay with what is being built, then why would we not just put both of those design reviews together? And I do think that that is possible. I think that we can say, Chris can come back to us and he can say, this is what we want to demo and this is what we want to replace it with. And that is the design review that I want you to look at. And I would prefer to have that. If I do not, then my answer will be no. If I'm just being asked whether or not someone can demo a historic building in Livingston, the answer to that question is no. And so if I were to make a different decision, I would have to see what is going to be put there in its stead.
Okay. And I can address that one right now, because if others have the same thoughts, I'm guessing you might. We are, again, Jim Woodhull, who used to run this, who was here when the First Interstate Bank came through. He looked at the bylaws again today for this board, and you can only, your decision today, and we will ask you to make a decision. It's not gonna get stayed and pushed forward, is only able to look at the demolition of this building. So yes, I understand what you're saying. We can't combine them though.
And I understand that in our current situation now, we are just looking at demolition.
Yeah.
And so for Chris's sake,
Yeah.
I'm just recommending to him that if you want to move forward with this, while still considering demoing it, it needs to be presented to me where, you say what you're going to take down and what you're going to replace it with. And you might see a little bit, I might change my mind based on that information. But as it sits right now, where I'm just being told that this building is going to be taken down, my answer will be no.
And that's valid. And that certainly will be up to Chris to address if he wants to go that route. But if he does not, we're gonna ask for a decision today.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've got it all marked down. And it's not that I don't disagree with you one way or the other, but that's what I was told we need to stick to.
Mhm.
So I've got the questions from Colleen. I've got the questions from you, Kristen. Jack?
I don't think I have any questions right now for the.
It doesn't mean you can't ask them really. It's just kind of a starting point. Lindy, do you wanna?
Well, those two vacation rentals, they're a separate building than what we're looking at. They're not. I thought we looked at the brick and and determined they were, in the beginning, it was Fink coveralls. But I don't know how far down they went, because I know that, metal riprap, or whatever you want to call it, that was added later on. That was not there in my lifetime. There used to be two white houses, two wooden one-story white houses facing Second Street. I remember the houses very well. I can tell you the families that lived in them. But
Can I answer that as a developer?
We can come back to that.
Yeah.
I just don't want it to be a back and forth.
oh,
So-
yeah, because I'm just wondering how much of that building is really coming down as far as the blueprint, because I don't think those two vacation rentals, Chris and I looked at them and they're different brick and everything, like they were built differently, or were they sectioned off of the original historic? Do you know that, Bob?
We developed the Goffner part. Goffner
Yes.
you're talking about. It was
Oh,
un-
it is a different building
Different building.
completely, right? That was my question. Yeah, they were, I remember when you did that, yes.
The two buildings in the back, not historic, but we added that as part of the
Yeah.
condo development.
Okay,
We're talking about the brick building. It was divided into two residential, and they're not RVOs, as the gentleman just said.
Oh, they're
They're
condos,
full-time
yeah.
residents.
Okay, is there a firewall between that and industrial towel? Or is it just a common wall? Oh,
They're separate buildings. with
Okay.
With about, what, 18 inches apart.
Okay, thank you. I guess I didn't,
Maybe 3 inches. apart.
thank you. I didn't notice that
And that's
today.
what our worry is, what it's gonna be like when,
When they
when they're
demolish
closed.
that, if it's gonna,
and the
damage,
foundation is
yes.
rock. And it's been there for 124 years buried.
so
We
they
have no
share the
idea.
same foundation. Okay, that's important.
So,
No, he said no. Chris says no.
No, they don't
Yeah,
share
they-
the same
they're
foundation.
just-
The
they're
Goffner
just
building was
next to each
built in,
other.
the Goffner building was built in
91.
91. The
Okay,
industrial towel building was built in middle 1920s. Two separate buildings.
Okay.
They don't share anything.
thank you.
We're talking about the
Thanks, John.
industrial towel building
Okay.
demolition, and that's the only thing.
Okay, oh, yeah,
That
and I,
building-
Yeah. Which is why my question is about any potential impacts demolition would have on the other building.
There's the picture of both buildings up there behind you,
Yeah. no,
industrial town and then our building.
yes.
Right here.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Can we have him come and answer those questions
yeah,
before?
and I'm gonna go over them again, we can do them one by one, I'm gonna give you all eight at once. So the questions by, Colleen online, this isn't really, whether it's affordable or market rate, what's going there, if anything, in the future is not under the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission. And so I would ask Colleen, why don't you contact me separately at the city and I can talk to you about what determines what's affordable and market rate. I can't tell you what's gonna go in any kind of new development because we haven't had it come before us yet. They're not required to bring it in. As a matter of fact, this is just looking at the deconstruction. So that's something I would say, I would not recommend that we talk about. The time frame on the deconstruction or the demolition, can you give that, Chris? Any kind of general time
It's
frame?
still in play. I think those permits are good for a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once you would get it, it's for a year, but does it typically for this kind of project take that long?
We're looking at next year sometime. Yeah,
And then once it starts, any ideas about how long that takes?
that project, that would take about 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
Okay,
But to come back to address your deal, we are concerned about the existing building. On DCI engineers who we hired, have done a lot of extensive due diligence on that building. We realized we'd be liable if there was any damage. So, yeah, to answer your question, we'll have that in play. My office is right next door. You're more than welcome to come over anytime, visit.
I saw you put the window in the building.
Well, I just reopened it.
Yeah.
It was covered up, but no, Build Group has done a lot, spent a lot of money on architects and engineers, structurally, that is a big, that's obviously the number one issue, is how and where, what needs to be done structurally to obviously protect your building and what we need in order for us to do what we're gonna do, which is still in play, so.
so
Just to clarify, Chris, we were the developers of it, we don't own it anymore. There are private owners that spoke for an A and B unit,
Right.
and they're residents of that building.
Yeah, so, but we are, there's a lot of money spent on engineering.
So that was one thing that Kristen did ask, do you have a report now on the structural integrity of the building? Anything about the quality of the brick and mortar of the facade that's there now?
On the neighboring.
No, on this building, is what you're
Yeah,
asking.
on this, like you've said,
So
it's
it's across.
untenable, but I wanna know if there's an official report similar to the asbestos report
Yeah, I got respect.
about specifics.
Yeah, no,
Is
we
it-
have a phase one,
Unsafe,
you mean the building as it is?
yes.
Yeah, the structure, like a structural engineer.
Yeah, so
report.
what we did is we did a phase one and a phase two that covers the environmental portion of it. We drilled 2 wells to test for soils. We did vapor samples, we did soil samples. It was about 120 grand to clean that site up and get it signed off as it exists. Now, the only asbestos that's there right now is up in the current roof, which states, but the building itself right now is not unsafe.
I meant structurally unsafe.
Structure,
Because you were talking about fire damage and
Yeah.
damage to the brick and mortar.
yeah.
Are there any specifics about why it can't, because you keep saying that it can't be reused, but there's no specifics about why?
Structurally, that building, the facade is compromised now. There was a fire up there, but in order to build and build new construction, we have to comply with code. You know, to get many things go into that, you know, your way roads, it goes into a lot of detail in terms of what you're gonna use that building for, you know, and the relationship it has with people that occupy it. So we're obviously looking at multifamily, and structurally, you couldn't build that wall today and wouldn't pass anything. It's old, it's compromised, I don't know, I guess I'm not really. Does that make sense?
Do you have any documented proof?
Yeah, oh, absolutely,
Yeah,
No,
like I understand you may not be the person to tell me exactly how it's compromised.
No, we've had
but-
structural engineer with, we've had environmental, we've had civil, which are still doing that, they're still in play.
So you don't have anything, I guess, that they can look at.
I could get you that, but we have, yeah, absolutely.
I think that's what you're asking.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
because I kind of, to your point, if the decision today is empty lot or building,
Right.
and I would
Yep.
need specifics on why the existing building can't remain as is, I guess.
Well,
Like structurally, what's wrong with it that can't be mitigated? And that's what I'm looking for is a report that lists the specifics, I guess.
but what we want to do, that building structurally.
So Chris, that's kind of
Yeah,
my
yeah.
point is that we're separating,
Right, no, I get it.
Demo
It's a
from
great
what you
question.
wanna
It's
do.
a great idea, and I wish we could coincide those two things, but.
and I guess, because a lot of my questions are similar to Kristen's where, like the asbestos and like the asbestos has to come out in the same way.
Anything I could.
And so that's kind of like
Yeah,
a
no, that's
negligible.
still
If
gotta
you,
do it.
if you demo it.
Yeah.
You'll have to take it out.
Yeah.
And if you build on top of the structure,
Yeah.
it has to be taken out
Yeah.
the same way. So that one's kind of that one cancels
Absolutely,
out.
yeah. It's $5 a foot to do that, so. it's-
And then as far as like salvaging that brick wall,
Mhm.
you know, there's like buildings over in Bozeman, you drive down Main Street and they are just brick walls. And like Langless is working on one right now.
Mhm.
And you drive down and you just see like, you look through the windows and they just salvaged
Mhm.
this 2-story brick wall
Mhm.
and built a shell within it.
Yeah.
And so why they can do that, but we can't do that with this wall, I need a little bit
So
more.
Langless's cost estimates on the project they do and their input costs, I guarantee far exceed what we're even thinking about.
Mhm.
Because they're not building housing and trying to get an affordable component.
Right.
I know what Langless charges.
And so
Down
again-
on Main Street, Bozeman, commercially, those are, you know, if we were just gonna do a commercial unit here and not try to build housing into this thing and keep our parking off street, you know, it's a whole different argument,
Right.
you know.
And so again, we run into this overlap that we're not allowed to look at right now where this building doesn't work for what you want to do. It works and it's fine. It just doesn't work for what you want to do. And so in order for me to
It's
make a
not- it's
decision,
not fine.
I need to know
It's-
what you
yeah,
want to
it's
do.
not fine, you know, it leaks, and we've spent money already. You know, if you go in the back portion of the shop area where Bob's courtyard is, you look through the wall, you see daylight. It doesn't work, those timbers, the whole design of that thing's been outdated. And talk to Nick Amps, who managed that place for years and years, what they've done over time is they have spent money. And, you know, they kept adding, you know, upgrades to this thing to the point where it became cost effective.
Mhm.
It's very expensive to let. It just is, and that's why a lot of them sit empty. They just to repurpose that amount of square footage into a commercial space. I don't know what you end up, you know. End up like what Carter's got across the street, some offices and a few things, but. It's just, is, you know, you're welcome to come down anytime, walk through. Have you been in the building?
I haven't.
Yeah,
no.
you should come down.
Yeah, I'd like
Yeah,
that.
I'm more than happy to, but back to Bob's concern, we are taking that consideration in on that foundation. It's built on sandstone. Why? I don't know, but that's what it's built on. And you're right, it is an issue. We're aware of that, so they do know. And again, I don't want to talk about my pay grade, but they're talking about driving pylons and just doing a lot of structural engineering to protect you. At the same time, enable us to do what we want to do. We're still in play. I'm trying to figure out what the total cost of it that's gonna be. You know, this is an evolving thing. So it's not easy. It's not easy.
I would love to consider this building with regards to what's gonna go there next, but we don't know what's gonna go there next.
Yeah, well, we're trying to build out, that's.
Really frustrating.
Yeah, that's what the deal is, and there's a lot that goes into thinking about that, you know, and obviously. The cost of demo, the cost of the property, the cost of the cleanup, you know, all those costs, and then permitting, and, that's all stuff that's gotta be spent prior to anything even coming out of the ground. You know, and then we gotta figure out how many units that we're gonna try to do. All along, still try to satisfy the city with their parking requirements, the city's upgrades that they're gonna need, especially in regards to storm drainage. You know, their infrastructure is questionable. You know, we've been working with Shannon down there to try to be a good neighbor, to try to bring some of that infrastructure that the city badly needs. At the same time that this gets developed, all those costs end up coming out of someone's pocket at the end of the day. And that's why it's hard to build. You know, we're not, those units next door to Bob Soda, I don't know, what are they, 800,000-900,000? That's not our target. Our target is rental units with a component of some affordable.
It's very admirable. We desperately need housing,
We do.
but right now, we can't consider what's gonna go there if we don't know what's gonna go
Well,
there.
that's the best I can tell you.
Yeah.
We like the idea. Eric is very conscious of community. He really is. And trust me, I wouldn't work for the guy if he wasn't, but with he, in my opinion, he's going above and beyond. The amount of green space he's trying to implement. The fact of preserving those trees down on Park in the corner, the bike trails. It's just, in parking off street, I mean, get that. Parking off street in and of itself is amazing. That takes up one floor, period. It's, the city needs a parking garage. We're gonna build one underneath this facility. Just for that project. And again, at the end of the day, it's why things are so darn expensive, you know? I just think, you know, a complex with multi-family units, it's new. It's downtown on that end of town, that will, in my mind, looking at the master plan, nicely blend into the residential area. But we need a certain amount of units in order to make this thing work. It's not easy, but he's willing to do that.
Apologize, I got a little bit back and forth. Do you have any more
Anyway,
Yeah,
questions?
you had a question about mitigation to the neighboring building as far as
We're
the
handling that. We
demolition.
truly are. We get it. We do. Yeah, we're not a bunch of cowboys just gonna search your stuff down.
It's just-
So.
It's just a major concern. You don't know.
It
what's
is a
under
major,
there.
oh, I do. No, that's the first thing we looked at.
Mhm.
I think I've been down over there and I looked at some of the brick that's compromised on that building, on your old building up on top. You know, I've been up all through that roof. You know, you got some brick issues up there that, quite frankly, the mortar is non-existent, you know. Suggested we get that fixed.
Well, we did that in 2008. So I think the weather has caused it, but you have to talk to the current owner.
Yeah.
They got their
But
condos.
it's just, you know, we're trying to be really good neighbors and still provide a lot of.
Yeah.
No, we're very aware of it.
Chris, I got one question.
Yes, sir.
In reading your proposal all the way through, I got the impression that the majority of the 5-story the podium and the 4 stories of residential were gonna be on the south end of this property, and the north end up toward Clark Street was gonna be more 1 story and a restaurant on the corner and things
Yes.
like that, that's your plan,
Yeah.
okay? Is there any way that we can preserve this building and kind of reverse that and put the 5-story stuff down on Old Clark Street? Use this for the restaurant.
Well, just think, with the skylines and the elevation that you see, we've got Elks Lodge, different. To have that building, let's just call it 5 stories for sake of argument, by itself on that end with a low, with no elevations in between it, and then it looks like, in my mind, it would look better if we started tall, because the buildings are taller, they stay consistent, within reason, and then come down, rather than having a big tall building right on that corner.
Sure.
And nothing in between. Okay. And another thing, the city is evident that, we don't entrance off Clark Street. I mean, we've got garbage, we've got sewer, there's just a lot of stuff that, and then obviously residents that, they don't want that to be the front entrance. We want to tie in with their overall plan for that corridor on Second to develop that into town to the park, just make it a 1 straight shot.
Chris, would you ever consider just making it a 3-story high? I know the Sherwoods are 5, I know the guest house is 5, but because of its location and losing the view, would you ever consider just 3 stories with a basement parking?
Yeah, so I would leave that up to, Mr. Horn and Bill Group, obviously
Okay.
he has, it takes a certain amount of units to justify the project.
I get it, yeah,
Especially if we're throwing in affordable.
Yeah.
components.
And just so there are no height restrictions
And
in
there are
the
no.
CBD.
That's-
So somebody
I
could
called Patricia
build a
Grable on that. Yeah, I
100-story
wondered.
tall building next to you tomorrow, and they won't have to go through a review process,
We've got to make that
Okay,
money
thank
up
you.
somewhere.
That was-
And again, that's why,
unless they're tearing something down.
yeah, building, saving that wall, which in my opinion isn't all that attractive. I think
You're talking
expense,
about just,
Yeah,
so I do want to make sure I understand and everybody knows when you say is not all that attractive,
well, just the brick.
the brick.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a.
and it would
personal-
take down, and so I think I apologize because I think I brought this up to this commission before. This part of the building, although not the parking lot, is also part of that is also within the historic district, so they would be taking down this nettle structure as well.
No,
Something you guys mentioned, do you have questions about that? Is it the whole thing?
I was not aware that metal part was under our purview, I
Yeah.
thought. Okay.
oh, it is,
I-
yeah. Because like, again, that wasn't always there, and even though it's part of the historic district, I have no problem with that coming down, it just doesn't fit. It's like putting grandma in a formal and she's wearing army boots, I've never cared, look at that. I'm too cosmetic, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
that's
I
why I
don't-
wanna save the outside wall of that, but, yeah.
So your
And that's
focus
not
is on the
Chris's
brick.
fault, that
Yes,
happened in
that- yeah.
Mr.
Across the board.
Case's, yeah,
Right, and,
It's the brick.
No one really cares about the garage part of it.
I
Yeah.
just kind of wanted to get.
I agree,
how
yeah,
I view
Mhm.
historical, there is a concept that with the idea of wanting to know what replaced it, well, if you're truly hanging your hat on the idea that this is historic, irregardless of what happens,
yeah,
that should be where you stand. Irregardless of what happens.
yeah.
I mean, he's right. At the end of the day, it's a marijuana.
Yeah, it was 2 little white houses with a
Right.
green lawn and,
And
in fact, you just took out the one garage this
Yeah.
last year. I remember exactly what that looked like.
It's a
Yeah.
hard call. You guys have a hard decision. I get it, but to set aside a historical point in someone's mind at the price of what's gonna replace it, it no longer is historic. Where's the value? In the historical entity in and of itself, or what's gonna be placed? We're replacing it now.
Yep.
And at a too high of a price to maintain that. Trust me, if I could make that work, I would.
Yeah,
I would, but just our elevations into that building as it structurally sits, I can't get parking garage in. I can't structurally preserve, what we need to do to Bob's next to Bob's old building or underneath it. You know, there's just a lot that has to go in there. That account for the storm drain system there. But it's, we're moving forward on it. And we're just trying to figure out all these costs.
Does anyone else have any more comments or questions for Chris?
Like the idea what Bob did with that wall, and yes, he preserved that. That to me has more historical value than.
That's
just-
sweet,
it-
yeah.
It's just because it works with what he did. But anyway, any more questions?
Okay,
Okay, well, thank you guys. Like I said, I'm down there. I got a little makeshift office set up. Please come by.
So are you asking
I am, yep,
for them to make a decision
Yep.
today?
yep, yes.
So I just wanted to bring it up because there was something mentioned about you coming back with different information, which is not required, but
Yeah, no, that would be, that we've already spent a lot of time and money and are moving forward, so yes, that is my ask. And I do, regardless of how you guys go, I do appreciate your time. It's not easy, it's a big deal, it's historical deal. It really is, and it's what sets us aside from most other areas. And I get it, I've put a lot of skin and money on some of these projects and I do it again. But I believe in this, I really do. Thank you. Yeah,
thanks, Chris.
okay, thanks, guys.
Do you want
I have one question. Asking Chris, you said that if a demo permit is, it's good for a year, so there's no rush to make a decision today because you can come back later with more information and ask for a demo permit.
But
correct?
he's asked
Yeah, I'm
to
asking,
have the
yeah.
decision today.
that's
Yeah,
today's
that-
agenda.
Yeah, that is today's agenda. So he's just clarified he'd like the, yeah.
Good.
So, and he can't get that permit without this vote.
Right,
So,
He's waiting on
yeah,
us.
so
Everything's
it's-
on pause
yeah,
right.
until we decide today.
Well, he's spending a lot of money on engineering and architects as we speak. Moving forward to this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you so much.
thanks. Do you want to close the public?
I'd like to close this portion of public comment. It's now closed.
Well, unless we have questions for Lucas or Bob.
That's typically not how we do the public hearing. They came up, they either asked questions or provided it, but it's not a back and forth. We don't do that very often here. We
Okay.
don't usually have people, but it really needs to be one-time comment.
Right.
And then I can line up their questions, and I think Lucas didn't have any questions, actually. I just hit all the questions that we did have. So if you have more questions, Chris is gone. That's why I was trying to get all those. And you can certainly discuss as much as you'd like. And then, if you want to call for a motion, but he has asked for a decision today, so.
So we have to decide with the information we currently have.
Mhm.
And he,
How to move forward.
I'm pretty sure he understands it's, you know, what you've already said, so he recognizes that.
Okay,
My thoughts on it are, being it was made later, when you look at our downtown historic area, I don't think the industrial tall building looks that historic anyway, and I'm kind of a cosmetic person. I have no problem with the demolition. I understand there's 44 homeless people currently, and we are desperate for housing. I think it's a perfect match. I think it's a win-win. Whether I lived in the neighborhood or not, I think it's a win-win. I think it should come down and put something worthwhile in there. And I can't think of anything better like Chris. He's a good man. I know what he did with the flour mill on K Street, and it changed the looks, but it's one of the best things that happened. In my
Oh, yeah.
lifetime, the flour mill was nothing. There was just nothing. So that's where I stand on it.
I would be happy to weigh the value of this building currently standing empty versus the value of what's going to replace it. But currently, we're not being given anything about what's going to replace it. We just have assurances that the building is not sound and that it's gonna be awesome, basically. And those are just assurances and there's no real plan. And like, I would love to compare what's there to what's proposed, but that's not what we have.
Not today, not at
Yeah.
this meeting.
And so when comparing what's there versus an empty lot, I'm going to sort of fall down on keeping the building, because there is conceivably stuff that could be done with that building. And I haven't heard anything persuasive. I guess that's why I was asking if there was anything official on the structural, like if it were unsafe, then that would be a different discussion. But there were no specifics, so I guess I'm concerned that we'd be tearing it down for promises and nothing actionable. Like, I totally agree that a whole bunch of housing would be of benefit to Livingston, I
Mhm.
totally agree. But there's nothing real there yet, which is my concern.
Anyone else have any thoughts?
I do, I have a letter from Tom Blurock. Can I read that into the record? I know all the members of the Detroit Preservation
You could-
Commission have gotten a copy, but
yeah, well, it will go into the record because he submitted it as a public comment. We don't typically read the entire public comments that people
Alright.
submit, but I will say I wanted to get it to you in case you wanted to bring up any of those points as part of your discussion. But it would be as a member of the public from Tom.
no, that's fine. I agree with everything you said in there. I've got a couple comments. The title of this commission is the Historic Preservation Commission. We've got a building now that we're talking about that is around 100 years old in the Livingston Historic Commercial District that we have purview over. We're talking about raising a building that is historically significant. And I'm absolutely against it. This building was built sometime in the middle 20s. 1920s. It was the Livingston Laundry and Dry Cleaning Company and Elite Cleaners when it was built. Back then, it's changed names obviously, but it's always maintained that occupation in that building. It's a historic building, and it's in our historic district. And I don't, personally, I don't have any problems at all in denying the application to raise it, because when it's gone, it's gone. What's next? I mean, we lost some other historic buildings there in town. We lost a lot of facades in probably the 30s and 40s and 50s as they were modernized. The reason that I'm on this commission is to try to maintain the historic significance of downtown Livingston. It's a beautiful town. I love it dearly. I don't want to see us lose it, so. I think there's other things that could be done. Obviously, he's got plans for this particular lot. We're not aware of it, but in the application that he submitted, he's planning on putting 5-story buildings in on that lot next to a 2-story Governor building. And take a look at this picture that Bob sent. And what are we gonna lose down 2nd Street if he puts 5 stories up there in that place? Look at the downtown master plan that the city's considering right now, and what the downtown master plan is proposing for 2nd Street with pedestrian and bicycle access and their idea of turning 2nd Street into a walking, cycling thoroughfare down into Sacagawea and Miles Park. And what would that do to the view shed if we tear down this building and you know, obviously, I don't think we're not gonna have any say in what he builds there.
Well, it has to come through you. So the design has to come through the historic.
Yeah,
commission.
it's still a historic
As I
preservation.
said at the beginning of the hearing, this is only looking at the demolition of what's there.
right.
This
I'm
discussion
thinking
should
about
not
the
be,
future a little bit, you know.
well, you can, but that's not what this hearing is for.
I know
So,
that's not what it's for, but I understand that, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but he will have to, anything that is built, like if they just wanted to tear it down and put a park, which I'm pretty sure isn't the case, no, they wouldn't have to come through here, but any structure at all that somebody wanted to build on that property, including if they were to salvage the facade and build up, all of that has to come through here. This is strictly, yes or no on the demolition.
I was unaware that he would have to
Oh, yeah,
come before us for new construction.
yes,
I thought we were just interested
and
in
that is.
renovations and,
No, and that's looking at it in the context of sort of like we did with the Fanning, Livingston Barn Grill building, right? Like they added on to it, but it's to make sure it's in the character of what that structure looks like. There's been
Okay.
discussions of, do we match the brick, like for the Fanning goat outside, or do we not? So you're not gonna be matching anything if there's nothing there to start with, but that design does need to come through here, because it's a whole new facade.
I stand corrected on that. And in regards to Tom's letter here. I agree with him when he says we're stewards of the historical heritage of Livingston. It would be a breach of our trust to approve the demolition of a historic building without knowing what would replace it. It is therefore my recommendation that we reject any demolition on the site until more definition of the project can be developed. And that's where I am. I'm against the demolition of the historic building.
Jennifer,
I yield.
Jennifer, is there a difference between demolition and just gutting it out?
Getting it out.
Gutting it
Gutting.
out,
Well, yeah, this is the demolition they've applied for is to remove everything.
totally, yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
So they're not, the part of what they're proposing right now is not to leave the facade and then
Okay.
take the rest of it. It is for all of it.
so if we say no today, they still have the option of just gutting it out and building off of whatever's already
They would
there.
So it still needs to come, anything that's within, like if they left the facade as it was, right? And they
Yes.
built things that you can see from the street within the interior, the roof, that doesn't come through here. But if they
Okay,
left
good,
the
okay,
facade and they
okay.
built up, that's still new exterior. That
yeah,
comes
because,
before
you
that.
know, it's, if you've taken a tour of it, it's high ceilings and beams and it's obviously a commercial building, but they could, if we say no today, they still, they wouldn't have to
Interior-wise,
go
yeah.
through us interior
Yeah,
wise,
no
okay?
interior, nothing
okay.
behind that existing facade.
But if they were opened up the windows,
If they opened up the windows there,
Then they
it
would
has
have
to come through.
yeah, they'd have to come back to us.
Even though, what's up there now was not the original
Yes, yeah.
windows,
Because
They
that's
need-
what's up
because
there.
that's from henceforth and evermore,
Any
okay?
exterior changes whatsoever, that's why we approve signs, any exterior changes whatsoever have to come through us.
Yeah,
And I
and that's
believe
another
that's
issue, 'cause
what-
that's
If
ugly.
they replaced the door,
Currently.
it would have to come through us.
Okay,
just-
that's right, okay.
For folks at home too, because I don't remember if this was said here. I know it was something that might have been discussed in previous meetings, like when Chair Blue Rock had gone to meet with them to look at it. The question was brought up because you're talking about the windows, like this was probably not the original window. These boards around here were probably not, so
That's right.
that's, but if they did, if they took out this and left the brick and did something else, they have to come through now because the building
Okay.
now is in the historical store.
Jennifer, if they take off the newer addition, that they put in
This
probably
part-
in the seventies or something, the corrugated metal, do they need to come to us for just that portion?
That's part of this demolition permit request.
But if, so there's no way we can separate that, even though it's not part of the historic building. I remember when that was added on, is that an option for them? Because that's not
You
part
mean
of the
to-
original
to remove
building.
That, like you would have, you're saying like to approve removing that, but to leave.
At another meeting, yes.
So
They could come back with a new.
they
approach.
could come back with a new approach, but I think
Okay,
that it
okay,
just, I
okay.
think they want you
That helps
to
me to decide.
proceed on this as a whole, which would
Okay.
be this portion, which I've said not super inclined to,
Okay.
Yeah, there are no conditional approvals today.
no, there are no
Yeah.
conditional approvals. I asked Jim that actually while we were looking at that. We don't typically, he says there's nothing
Not
that,
today,
that
okay.
restricts it. But that has typically never been something, he said, that HPC does. And if you're gonna deny it, there's kind of no need for a condition, but I would say if you're going to deny it, it might be helpful for the record and for the applicant. If, we'll get the vote, and then maybe if you could tell me, you know, like, would you like to, and you've kind of already mentioned it, see him come back in with, and what information you would like to see
An
to change that
alternative,
mind?
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Just because I think he had wanted to kind of get that idea, and I think he had to leave before we were done.
Okay, is there any further discussion or questions among the board? Okay,
Call for a vote.
so I'd like to call for a vote.
Oh, sorry, a motion? That's my fault.
I'm sorry, would someone like to make a motion that we approve it?
You make the motion and then you vote on the motion that you make.
I move that we deny the application.
Okay,
I second it.
all those in favor?
I'm gonna do a roll call vote. if I
Oh,
may.
pardon me,
That's okay, just so we
Any
have.
more discussion?
any
Pardon?
further discussion?
Okay, Kristen, you seconded? Okay, if y'all are ready to vote, I'm just gonna call on each one of you to note your vote in the record.
I'm sorry, are we saying I to?
We're saying no, they can't demolish
Yeah,
it.
we'll
So
say
the
I
motion-
to the motion.
The motion, yes, the motion
Okay,
is to
motion to
deny, so
deny.
if you vote
Yes.
yes,
Just want to make sure.
Oh, I know.
then you're voting to deny the yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't let you. Okay, so Kristen, anyone?
Aye.
Okay, Eli Isley,
Aye.
okay, Jack Luther.
Aye.
And Lindy?
Aye.
Aye, okay, so the motion to deny the request for the demolition permit has passed unanimously.
Can I make a comment about the condition of,
Or what would make you reconsider?
yes.
Yeah.
It seems that we've all agreed that we would reconsider potential demolition of the building if there was a proposal for what would replace it. Is that,
That's not my.
You can't do that at the same,
okay,
yeah,
No, I think what she's saying is.
like this, it would be a breach of our trust to approve the demolition of a historic building without knowing what would replace it.
Yeah.
Is that?
So.
I agree with
Summer,
that.
a summary?
So if, I guess, you know, the app is not gonna continue to come back through. It sounds like what y'all are saying is, both of you have said it pretty clearly. Part of your not wanting to approve this is because you don't know what's coming. Is that
Yeah, we
correct?
can't just knock down an historic building that is like categorically can be salvaged for something.
Well, and I think that's just, I would say, and I'm certainly, Chris is gonna see this and I will relay that to him as well, but, I mean, you may wanna consider if it's just about the building that's there now, it really wouldn't make a difference what goes thereafter, right? So your decision needs
Correct.
to be on the building that's there now.
Like it almost should have never been presented in this way. It
That's
should,
how we have to do it,
it
sorry.
should be presented. This is what's coming down and this is what it's being replaced with. And it is my recommendation to Chris, even if it doesn't come to
Yeah.
us and he like takes it to the city commission. Just as a, you know, recommendation, he should probably have his feasibility study completed. Feasibility study and some kind of conceptual drawing of what will be there to get any kind of, response that he would like to see.
So
That is just my recommendation.
feasibility study about the building, because again, this
like,
discussion really
he
is not
says
gonna
in
have
it-
anything to do with uses.
It's, and
He says in his deal right now that they are currently working on their feasibility
Okay.
and conceptual
Okay.
stage. And that they will then move on to the design and entitlement, like they should just finish that and say, this is our plan. And it is my recommendation that they do that before they get any kind of movement that they would like to see.
It sounds like for at least two of you, maybe all of you, that without that, this is. You wouldn't come to a different decision.
I'm against removing the historic building.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
and I am as well.
Okay. All right, well, thanks. I know this wasn't easy and this is definitely more involved than what our normal businesses.
Very important though.
It is important. So thanks. And thanks for doing it in a very civil and polite manner. Do y'all have any, do you want to call it, any board comments?
Am I allowed to make the motion as the vice? Okay.
I'm sorry,
I don't know how to make a motion to close it, I don't think.
I don't think, yeah, you don't have to make a motion. to close.
I have
Jack has-
some commission comments. I would like to ask Jennifer if, since we've completed the studies of the 16 new buildings,
Mhm.
studies downtown, if there's any possibility to continue that next year.
We got extra, it is possible. I think what I'll just let you know is before we proceed with the money that we have for this next year, I'm probably gonna bring you one or two options of what to do with it, because that money was a special pot of money. It was $18,000 that we got that was not part of pass-through. It was something they gave us specifically so we could do more surveys.
Mhm.
We don't get that again. So that was a one-time
I
deal.
thought it
So
was.
it doesn't mean we can't do it. We got $6,000 in pass-through money this year. It would just mean that we'd only be able to do a little bit at a time. So that's something I think I'd like to bring forward to you, maybe some options for kind of how to proceed so that it's not so fragmented. We do some surveys and then we don't do any for a few years to see if there's some other ways that we'd sort of like to focus the efforts of this group and the little bit of money that we do get and kind of make some long-term plans. So if that's what I was planning to do at some point soon. So if that sounds okay to you guys,
Mhm.
because I think it needs to be you that kind of guides that discussion. So,
Discuss it further at another meeting.
yes, and I think you had also asked just real quick about those surveys. We will get them also to a place where you can access them online. We're still making some updates to the website,
Okay.
but there's gonna be a page, my preference would probably be that it's through your webpage, the Historic Preservation Commission webpage, where you could go and look at those surveys.
And they're public information.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
There's no like super secret, this is, no, it's all public.
Okay.
And they are, no, I think they have assigned the numbers because she sent you those. So yeah,
Yeah.
they've
Yeah.
assigned the register
Yeah.
numbers, the national
She's got-
register numbers to the buildings that we did.
Yep, they're all done.
I make a motion that this meeting be adjourned.
I think we can just adjourn it.
You can just adjourn it at
Oh,
4:55.
have a good memory. It's just short.
Let me turn this. off.
Thank you, just appreciate your comments.
Yeah, we'll do more again.
Um, sorry.